Thank you for supporting our channel. Thank you for supporting Wizan. Please like, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification bell for any future videos. In this video, I want to explain to you how you learn turnarounds and the fundamental mistakes that you make by concentrating on them. Now, for those of you who don't know what a turnaround is, some places of interest in London can only be left by travelling in one direction. So you may have to travel east. Madame Tussauds would be an example of this. It's on a dual carriageway, so you must travel east first of all. So if you want to travel westbound, you're going to need to find a set of roads that would enable you to turn left, left, left and right, or right, right, right and left to come back in the opposite direction. That's a turnaround. Now, to work out a turnaround, many of you may do that when you're actually pointing the point. So you're pointing Madame Tussauds, and at the same time you're thinking to yourself, what might be asked? What might be asked with this specific question? If they ask me to go that direction, I need to know something else. If they ask me to go north, I need to know what the first left is. If they ask me to go south, I need to know what the first right is. And by doing that, you increase the volume of information you need to take in with every single point that you visit. And that volume of information, it's not a benefit, it's detrimental to the way that you're going to learn. Because first of all, you've only just begun to understand that Madame Tussauds is in Marylebone Road. Now, this is a big place of interest in a big road. So we're using a very, very easy example, but the examples can go down to the smallest scale on the smallest road. Your job is to be able to name the road that that point is in. And beyond that, not much else, because how do you know if anything that you're taking in, if any information you're taking on board that day is of any use to you at all? And you just don't. Yet when you practice point to point, every single day you practice point to point, the questions on the sheet are actual reality. They are actual questions being asked day to day. So if the question is traveling westbound, you are now aware that you may need to calculate a westbound journey. And you now know why you're doing it. You know specifically that the question's been asked, and you know you should seek out the answer. So to do that, to seek out that answer, you now look at the map. You now look on Google Earth or Google Street or Apple Maps. You ask a friend, and you maybe even go back to the destination and have a little look around to see what is working and what isn't working. That investigative part of what you're doing is an intrinsic part of how you will remember and how you will learn the information you need. There is no use to having tools in your toolkit when you have no idea what they're for. But when you have the question arise and you suddenly think, I need something specific for this particular question, then it can be learned. And the investigative side of it is an absolute excellent way of letting it be absorbed. Whereas if you just collect information with no regard for the fact that no question's ever been asked using it and will never be asked requiring it, you are carrying a weight of information that is of no use to you. And I guarantee that you at that present moment in time are still not completely au fait with the beginner's material that you should have already done. I guarantee that you're dropping points that you shouldn't be doing. I guarantee that you're messing up runs with illegal turns that you shouldn't be doing because they're already turnings that are in your blue book that do the question and answer it in the way that it should be answered. So you're still making mistakes with the basics, and yet you think you should be pushing forward with the intrinsic detail of stuff that no one has asked. The way you learn turnarounds is because an examiner asks a question, that question requires it, you then investigate it and learn it. If you do it the other way around and presume that maybe they'll ask this on the left and leave on the left only, so I better learn a turnaround, quite frankly, the volume of information that you're going to swamp yourself with is going to be stupendously humongous. And quite frankly, you're not going to cope very well, and you're still going to be making mistakes with the beginner stuff. So what's actually happening is you're trying to be clever and be able to answer a clever question when 9 out of 10 questions are not clever questions. They're basic and simple, and you haven't taken care of those basic and simple questions. and you're making mistakes there. So you may feel, oh, I'm fantastic. I did answer a question that was particularly difficult, but I had to turn around and nail it. I prepared myself for it and I wondered if they'd ask it, and they did ask it. So not only did they have to ask it, they had to ask it to you for the first time on your appearance, so that you had no opportunity to preempt and practice it prior to that. Which 9 times out of 10 for every question you do have. You do have the opportunity to practice it because it's on the daily sheets. And here lies the rub. What you should be doing to learn detail, to learn turnarounds, to learn the intricate things about all these questions is practicing the actual questions, seeing what the actual examiner is trying to make you achieve and attacking that specific question. The idea that you think you can preempt or that you can predict, that's for the advanced students who already are great at everything else. And that is not 99% of you. 99% of you are not the great students and are always making mistakes with the stuff that you've already done. So recently, a comment was posted on the YouTube channel about spinning plates, and it is very much like spinning plates. You're trying to keep every plate spinning. But what you shouldn't be doing is putting another plate on another spike to spin that one as well, when you're already struggling to spin all the plates that you've got in action at that present time. So stop trying to push forward. A lot of it isn't about pushing forward. A lot of it is about getting to a standard, maintaining that standard, and being good at what you know. So every time you're pushing on, trying to be predictive, trying to be preemptive, you're probably taking up memory and energy and revision space that could have been spent concentrating on a great deal of the basics. So the best way to learn turnarounds is to sit down at your map and do point to point. And here's where you fail again. The volume of point to point that most of you do is too low. In a 3-hour session, you should be doing 50 to 80 runs with a partner. If you're not, it means you're doing them too slowly, thinking too much, analyzing too deeply, looking for the absolute wonderful answer when you should have settled for a basic answer on that question because your level is too low. Looking for the absolute perfect answer is for the absolute advanced student who's taken care of everything else, and most of you haven't. Get your house in order. Be mediocre at most things, and you will, by playing the percentages, get through quicker and score more often. If you keep trying to work on the advanced stuff is going to maybe come up one day. You'll get asked one advanced question that you can nail it because you prepared for it, just one. But nearly every single appearance you fail on the basics. You fail because you drop points that you shouldn't have. You fail because you take turnings that don't work, that turnings that are in your blue book that do work that you should have used instead of. Take care of the basics, play the percentages. The best way to learn turnarounds and detail is by doing point to point. Increase the volume of point to point that you do. I always point out there is 2 objectives. You have one major objective, finish the knowledge. Very important. The other objective is also important. Finish as fast as you physically can. You are not trying to be a knowledge legend. You are trying to get a job as quickly as possible. So if you want to keep chasing detail after detail after detail, go ahead. You will be doing the knowledge a long time. The knowledge is about playing the percentages, taking care of the basics, and answering questions on appearances, scoring 6 for every run that you do, not 10. You score 6 with every run that you do, and you're out in 12 appearances. So why are you trying to score 10s? I know that many of you have been taught and told to take notes. So understand this, that taking notes is a very, very poor memory technique. And also most of you are not very good administrative minded that you can settle all this information down into a database that you can then regurgitate whenever you want. You're not very good at it. If you do want to take notes, the best way to probably do that is in the WizPoints app, tap on the point in the question and add the notes that you want, and it'll stay next to that point for as long as you've got the app. So that's the best way to do that. But even that I wouldn't do. The way I take notes is in my mind, because if I can remember it, it's done. Every time you take a note, you're putting the information over there and hoping that you remember it. Whereas if you don't do that, you basically engage your brain and you attempt to remember it, and you'll make far better progress. Very often, you don't actually know which points would require a turnaround, and you start making turnarounds for points that don't need them. So for example, Canning Town Station, I know that people are turning Canning Town Station around. It could be that the examiner is asking it to be turned around. That can only happen on the level stage 5, which is 21s, and they can only ask one question like that on each appearance. So prior to that, you've got plenty of time to come across that information and practice it if you're doing enough point to point. They cannot ask it on any other level, and it doesn't need a turnaround. Canning Town Station doesn't need a turnaround. Then there are points that are ambiguous. An ambiguous point would be Angel Station and Victoria Stakes Public House near Alexander Palace in Park Road. These 2 points are ambiguous for one simple reason of, is it dangerous to set it on the right or leave it on the right? And quite frankly, is it dangerous doesn't really apply, because the phrase that's used throughout the knowledge is there is no traffic. And when there's no traffic, there is no danger. So you could sit at the side of the road as long as you want and then take the turning that you're trying to do when the road is clear. So danger doesn't really play that part. So those points don't need to be left on the left or set on the left only. They are ambiguous, and the examiner should be expressing that they're requiring you to leave that specific point on the left or set it on the left for this particular calculation today. And with any ambiguous point, you are more than allowed to ask the examiner, sir or ma'am, do you wish me to leave that on the left, or am I able to leave it on the right, because it's obviously ambiguous? Which brings us to a little bit of some of the rules that you're probably not aware of and you need to be aware of and stay aware of. Keep left bollards. Don't prevent you from leaving on the right or setting on the right. Bear that in mind. Keep left islands, pedestrian islands. Don't stop you from doing that, because you're not going to stop between them. Traffic lights don't stop you from setting on the right or setting on the leaving on the right, because it's illegal to stop between the studs of traffic lights. That's not a place that you're allowed to stop. Zebra crossings don't stop you from leaving on the right or setting on the right, because again, it's illegal to stop there regardless of what direction you're traveling from. So if you have a friend who's advising you to take notes on the first left, notes on the first right, and to learn a turnaround for each of the points that you go and visit, you are quite literally being sent up the garden path and being encouraged to take years to do the knowledge and to take on board information that you will never ever need. And by doing that, you are not focusing on the fact of the information that you do need, the stuff that you need to be good at, the stuff that we know day in and day out is being asked. So be careful of that advice. The knowledge is actually quite easy. Call your blue book. It's your language. It gives you the ability to speak, and all the turnings in your blue book are working turnings. If you stay using those, you'll pass. Do point to point. Do point to point as much as you can take, because point to point is the actual exam that you're attempting to take. And find and learn new points. And every time you find and learn new points, those points will be on a daily point sheet and being asked in questions, which gives you the opportunity to practice them and see if they require turnarounds. And if you didn't know it required a turnaround and you get caught out once or twice, I promise you, you're going to get caught out so few times that it's a reward for the basic information you didn't collect for every single point that you would have pointed. The volume of that information you would have pointed so outweighs the fact that you might make a mistake with one question. Adding extra information to every point that you collect, such as first left, first right, a turnaround, and any other thing that you might want to add, will diminish the amount of points that you can remember that day. So when you're a beginner, your objective isn't to be a master of 5 points, because that's not going to get you very far. Your objective is to know the road name that 1,500 points are in, exactly like that, at the click of a button, that you can pull them from your mind instantly. That's your objective straight away. 1,500 points is an excellent amount of points to have your first appearance. And yet again, a lot of you are out there pointing 6,000 points before you even start appearances. 3,000 points is what it takes to clear 56s, and 6,000 points is what it takes to clear the knowledge. So why are you trying to be the greatest knowledge student that ever lived before you even start appearances? Keep in mind your goal. You're trying to finish the knowledge as quickly as possible. To finish the knowledge as quickly as possible, there is one incentive. Be on appearances. If you're not on appearances, you're nowhere. Most of the appearances that you will be failed, not because you didn't know one particular turnaround. They will be failed because you dropped points of interest that you shouldn't have, or you took turn-ins that you knew as you was taking them didn't work. That's how you fail appearances. What you didn't know in that appearance, what you could never have known, if they ask you points that you haven't pointed yet, you could never know it. There's nothing you could have done about it. You're already working extremely hard. If they ask you a question you've never heard before, there's not much you can do other than take all your experience and see how good you can get on with that specific question. You're already working as hard as you possibly can. Stop making your knowledge harder. Stop trying to learn things that you don't need. Try to focus and play the percentages.